The glass doors didn't close all the way on the first try. They met resistance, soft, almost polite, then slid shut with a second, firmer pull from the building's motor. The sound arrived late, a muted seal, like a thought that didn't belong in her head but had found its place there anyway. Evelyn Hart stood in the lobby as if she had stopped for no reason. The security desk was already dark, the guard gone to his last round. The polished floor held the building's lights in it, white strips that made a clean geometry out of empty space. Her reflection was there too, flattened into the marble like an afterimage. A woman in a dark coat, hair pinned back, posture exact. She was waiting. Not in the obvious way people wait for cars or elevators. Not with impatience or boredom. She simply did not move. She did not go up. She did not go out. She remained where the glass and stone opened into a hollow that had been designed to feel like confidence. It was almost midnight. She wasn't supposed to be here this late. She wasn't supposed to be thinking about anyone at this hour. It was an hour for emails she didn't answer and calls she didn't return. An hour for the quiet pull of habit. Kitchen light on, kettle, the same mug, the same hand on the counter because her body still expected someone to come up behind her and speak her name into the back of her neck. Not anymore. 10 years was long enough to make grief respectable. Long enough for other people to stop looking at her with softened eyes, to stop offering condolence like a coat you can't refuse without seeming ungrateful. Long enough for the story to become part of her bio, not her day-to-day. And yet, her hand found the side seam of her coat as if she was checking for something she didn't carry. Phone, keys. The movement was small, automatic. It calmed her, briefly, like counting. The elevator pinged somewhere above, high and distant, and she felt her attention sharpen. Not toward the sound itself, but toward what it might mean. She told herself she was still in the building because she had stayed late with the finance team. Because the board packet had been wrong in 2 places, and she couldn't bear errors, not in documents that were meant to be clean enough to survive scrutiny. Because she had always preferred finishing things herself rather than trusting them to someone else's care. All true. Also not the whole truth. The lobby light was too bright for an hour like this. It made her skin look almost colorless in the reflection. It made the veins in her hand visible when she took off her gloves. She slid them into her pocket with the same precision she used for everything. The sound came again, this time footsteps, not in the lobby but in the corridor that led from the employee entrance. A careful rhythm, neither hurried nor languid. Evelyn knew most people's gaits without meaning to. The building had taught her that. The building had taught her to listen. She turned before she decided to. Mila Reyes emerged from the hallway with a slim laptop bag slung over her shoulder and a second tote in her hand, the kind made of thick canvas that held its shape. Her hair was pulled into a loose knot that had given up near the nape of her neck. A few strands clung there as if she'd been working hard enough to sweat without noticing. Her coat was lighter than Evelyn's, camel wool, too large in the shoulders, and she looked like she had borrowed it from someone taller. She looked young in a way that wasn't naive. Young like a lit match in an old room. She stopped when she saw Evelyn. Not a stumble. Not a flinch. Just a pause, an adjustment, 1/2 second where her body acknowledged the power in the space before deciding not to perform fear for it. Ems, Hart, Mila said. The honorific sounded wrong. Not because it was disrespectful, but because it placed Evelyn in a category she'd spent years inhabiting so fully that she had forgotten how strange it could feel on the tongue of someone who didn't owe her anything beyond the job. It's late, Evelyn replied. Her voice was steady. Her voice always was. She had trained it into steadiness the way other women trained themselves into smiles. Mila's gaze went past Evelyn for a moment to the darkened security desk, then back. I know. Her eyes didn't ask permission. They observed. In the bright lobby, Mila's face was all sharp angles softened by fatigue. She wore no makeup that Evelyn could see. Her mouth had a slight indentation on the lower lip, as if she had been biting it without realizing. Did you forget something? Evelyn asked. Practical question. An acceptable one. Something that didn't admit the more unsettling truth. Evelyn had left her office lights on. She had not turned them off on purpose. She had wanted stupidly to be seen. Mila's mouth twitched almost a smile. It didn't settle into anything. No, she said. I was finishing the report you asked for. I didn't ask for it tonight. No, Mila agreed. You asked for it tomorrow morning. There was a quiet audacity in that. Not defiance. Something more precise, an insistence on being taken seriously. Evelyn felt something shift under her ribs, small but undeniable. tightening, a heat that didn't belong to anger. She should have let it end there. She should have nodded once, offered a neutral praise, and walked away into the night, into her car, into the safe boundary between her life and everyone else. Instead, she said, "Show me." Mila blinked. "Here." Evelyn glanced at the empty lobby. It was too open, too exposed. The building's emptiness had a way of magnifying everything. A voice echoed. A laugh carried. A rumor could be born in the space between a glance and a touch. "There," Evelyn said, nodding toward the small seating area near the corner windows, where two chairs faced each other across a low table. It was staged comfort. It still felt like a choice. Mila followed without hesitation. They sat. Evelyn kept her coat on. She always kept her coat on in situations that could turn intimate. It made her feel less reachable. Mila set her tote down gently, as if there were something fragile inside. The city outside was a glittering grid. Chicago at night looked like it had been designed by someone with a taste for severity. The river was a darker vein cutting through it. The streetlights made the wet pavement shine. Mila pulled out her laptop. The screen's glow lit her hands. Her fingers were long, capable. She moved quickly, without fuss, as if she had done this alone many times and trusted herself. Evelyn watched the hands before she watched the content. She didn't mean to. It happened the way the mind sometimes betrays the story you tell yourself about what you notice. "Okay," Mila said softly, and turned the screen toward Evelyn. Not too far. Not too close. Enough that Evelyn could lean in without crossing into Malia's space. The small courtesy of distance. Evelyn leaned anyway. The report was clean. Too clean. It didn't look like something produced by committee. It looked like a thought that had been refined without losing its heat. The metrics were there, the projections, the audience segmentation. But there was something else too, language that moved like a story, not a spreadsheet. Mila had mapped sentiment as if it were weather. She had suggested shifts in tone, small changes in how the company spoke to the world, not just what it sold but what it implied. She had written about desire without using the word. She had written about trust in a way that made it feel physical. Evelyn read, and felt her throat tighten with something dangerously close to admiration. "This," Evelyn said, and her finger hovered near the trackpad before she pulled it back. No touching. She didn't touch other people's things without asking. It was an old rule, and not only about objects. "This section, explain it." Mila's shoulders rose and fell with a quiet breath. "Did that perception lag," she said. "The public doesn't see what we are. They see what they believe we are." Evelyn's eyes stayed on the screen. "And what do they believe?" "That we're cold." Mila said it simply. No insult, no apology. Competent, efficient, untouchable. A small silence opened between them. Evelyn could feel the word in her mouth. Untouchable. It tasted metallic. It tasted like her. Mila continued, softer now. "Which is not a bad thing. But it's limiting. It keeps us from being wanted." Evelyn's gaze lifted, slowly, to Mila's face. Wanted. The word landed in her chest with an unexpected weight. It had been years since she had thought about being wanted. Years since she had allowed herself the simple vulnerability of it. Wanting was easier. Wanting could be done alone. Being wanted required other people to see you clearly. Her ring finger felt suddenly conspicuous. The subtle pressure of metal against skin. The habit of it. The promise that had become more habit than vow. "You're talking about branding," Evelyn said too calmly. Mila's eyes held hers. Yes. The room didn't move. The building didn't move. Only the air between them thickened, as if it had learned a new shape. Evelyn looked back down at the screen. She forced herself to keep reading. Not because she needed to, but because she needed something to do with her gaze. Mila's report suggested a campaign built around not product, but presence. Around the human story behind the company, its people, its care, the texture of its work. Mila proposed bringing the CEO into the narrative in controlled doses, a photograph that wasn't staged. A short piece about leadership that admitted cost. A line about loss, not as confession but as truth. Evelyn felt a flicker of irritation. Not at Mila. At the idea. "No," she said. Mila stilled. "No, I don't do personal," Evelyn said. "I don't." She stopped. The sentence wanted to become too much. She restarted with a clearer truth. "I don't use my life as leverage." Mila's expression didn't change, but something softened behind it. Understanding, maybe. Or caution. I'm not suggesting leverage, Mila said. I'm suggesting honesty. Evelyn laughed once, quietly, without humor. The sound surprised her. She hadn't meant to make it. Honesty, she repeated. Mila waited. She didn't fill the space with nervousness. She let the silence exist. That was rare. Evelyn felt the old discipline rise in her like a wall. The reflex to shut down anything that could become vulnerable. The habit of not being the woman who admits to missing, to needing, to wanting. She looked at Mila again. Mila's face in the lobby light looked too young for this conversation. Too alive. And yet she was sitting across from Evelyn as if she belonged there. As if the distance between them wasn't a chasm, but a difference in altitude that could be traversed with care. How long did this take you? Evelyn asked. Mila's mouth curved, almost again. Longer than it should have. That's not an answer. Mila glanced down, and Evelyn saw it. One small thing. The faint bruised shadow under Mila's eyes, the slight dryness at the corners of her mouth. Signs of time spent in effort rather than sleep. 4 hours, Mila admitted. Maybe 5. Evelyn's jaw tightened. You weren't asked to do that. Mila lifted her shoulders in a small shrug. I wanted to. That phrase. So simple. So dangerous. Evelyn looked at the report again as if it could save her from the feeling that had begun to spread. Something warm. Something unsteady. A sensation of being drawn into a narrative she hadn't approved. You're the youngest employee in this building, Evelyn said, and regretted it the moment it came out. It sounded like a warning. It sounded like a reminder of hierarchy. Mila's eyes flickered once. I know. Evelyn's throat tightened again. She could feel the impulse to soften, to reassure, to offer some small kindness that wouldn't cost her authority. She didn't do it. She did something else. Don't stay this late again without telling your manager, Evelyn said. Mila's gaze stayed steady. You're not my manager. The sentence was fact. It was also a line drawn with care. Evelyn felt heat rise behind her eyes. Not tears, not that. Something sharper. The sudden awareness that Mila was watching her with an intelligence that wasn't only professional. Evelyn's mind tried to find a safer place to land. It returned, as it always did lately, to the same thought. This is a mistake. Not because Mila wasn't capable. Not because Evelyn was weak. Because the building had rules and Evelyn had lived inside them long enough that the idea of breaking them felt like stepping off a ledge. This report, Evelyn said, voice lower now, is good. The compliment tasted strange. She didn't give praise easily. Praise was currency. Praise created expectations. Mila's face changed, just slightly, a loosening around the eyes. A quiet relief that didn't look like hunger for approval, but like the satisfaction of being seen correctly. Thank you, Mila said. A pause. Evelyn could have ended it there. Instead, she asked, where did you learn this? Mila blinked. Which part? All of it, Evelyn said, and meant it. The metrics. The instincts. The way Mila spoke about public desire like she'd touched it, like she knew how it moved. Mila's gaze drifted toward the window for a moment, as if she was watching her own reflection in the city lights. Online, she said. And in school, and in other places. Evelyn waited. Mila's fingers moved against the edge of the laptop. A small repeated gesture, tap, tap, then still. Like she was grounding herself. I worked my way through college, Mila said. Not glamorous jobs. But I had this side thing. I'd help small businesses with social media. Not just posting. Positioning. Voice. Making people feel something when they saw a logo. Evelyn watched her speak. The way her mouth shaped the word feel. And it worked, Mila added, a little quieter. It worked because I understood what people were hungry for. Not products, stories. Permission. Permission. Evelyn's body reacted before her mind could decide what it meant. A subtle tightening, a small inhale that did not reach her lungs fully. She felt the pressure of her own self-control like a hand on her sternum. Mila continued as if she hadn't noticed. I know it sounds shallow, but it isn't. It's just attention. It's what we give and what we withhold. Evelyn's gaze dropped again, not to the screen, but to Mila's hands. Mila's nails were short. No polish. There was a small ink mark on the side of her thumb, like she'd been writing notes and smudged herself. Evelyn felt an absurd tenderness for that mark. It was too intimate a thing to notice. No, not that. Not exactly. She forced her focus back to the report. You're saying Hartwell is withholding. Mila nodded once. Yes? And you think we should stop? Mila's eyes met hers. I think you should decide what you want people to know about you. The sentence was careful. It didn't assume. It offered. Evelyn felt her ring finger again. The metal. The old weight. The way it had become a habit that no one questioned. The way it kept her anchored to a life that had ended, not because she wanted to cling to the past, but because letting go felt like betrayal. It felt like moving on without permission. Mila watched her. Evelyn didn't look away quickly enough. For a moment, only a moment, she felt exposed. Not in a scandalous way. In a human way. Like someone had seen the seam in her control. You're tired, Evelyn said suddenly, too brisk. A retreat. Mila's mouth quirked, faint. You're still here too. Evelyn's jaw tightened. That's different. Mila didn't argue. She didn't agree. She just sat there, the laptop between them like a neutral object that could not hold the charge in the room. Outside, a car moved along the street below, headlights sliding across the glass. In the lobby, the building hummed softly. Ventilation, electricity, the quiet continuity of a world that would keep moving whether Evelyn wanted it to or not. Evelyn glanced at the time on Mila's screen. 11:47. You should go, she said. Mila's fingers hovered over the keyboard. She didn't close it immediately. She looked at Evelyn instead. Can I ask you something? Mila said. The question was gentle. It felt like stepping toward a boundary without crossing it. Evelyn's instincts flared. She wanted to say no. She wanted to protect herself with refusal. She wanted to maintain the clean lines of this interaction. She heard herself answer, yes. Mila hesitated, just a beat too long. Then, why are you here? The words were simple. The question was not. Evelyn's throat tightened. She felt, abruptly, the shape of her own loneliness. The long nights. The quiet apartment. The habit of turning on the kitchen light and expecting nothing. The old impulse to reach for a second glass without thinking. She could have lied. She had lied in more polished ways in boardrooms full of men who thought they could read her. She could have said work. She could have said responsibility. Instead, she said, I don't like leaving things unfinished. A partial truth. A safe truth. Mila's gaze softened, not pity, not sympathy. Something more unsettling. Recognition. And the report? Mila asked, voice low. Evelyn's attention sharpened. What about it? Mila swallowed. It was visible in the movement of her throat. Was it unfinished? Evelyn felt something in her chest fracture, quietly. Not a dramatic break. A hairline crack in something that had been held too tightly for too long. She did not answer. Mila nodded once, as if she had received her answer anyway. She closed the laptop finally, with a soft click. The sound felt too intimate in the empty lobby. I'll send it to your assistant, Mila said, standing. Her movements were careful, as if she was aware that anything too quick could startle the moment into something else. Evelyn stood too. She should have remained seated. She should have held the line of authority. Standing made them closer. Standing made them equal in height, if nothing else. Mila lifted her tote, adjusted the strap of her bag. She looked suddenly younger, in the small gesture of settling her coat, like a woman who had been pretending not to feel the cold until it touched her. At the employee corridor, she paused. Art, Mila said. Evelyn's gaze caught on the sound again, the honorific, and she felt the strange wrongness of it. Mila, Evelyn said, and the name came out quieter than she intended. Mila's eyes widened slightly. A small surprise. A tremor of something that wasn't fear. Yes, Mila replied. Evelyn's mind searched for something safe to say. A directive. Boundary. A closure. What emerged instead was only, go home. Mila's mouth softened. I will. She didn't move right away. She held Evelyn's gaze for one more beat, as if she was memorizing it, or as if she was making sure Evelyn was real. Then she turned and disappeared into the corridor, her footsteps fading into the building's deeper silence. Evelyn remained where she was. The lobby lights were still too bright. The city still moved beyond the glass. Her reflection on the floor looked like a woman who had made no choice at all, only stood still. Her hand went, without thinking, to her left ring finger. The metal was there. She pressed it once hard enough to feel the edge. A habit. A miss. A boundary. And for the first time in years, she wondered, quietly, unwillingly, what it would feel like to not have it there. Thought returned, soft and insistent, like the doors closing late. This is a mistake. But it no longer sounded like certainty. It sounded like fear. It sounded like wanting. It sounded like something unfinished. The email arrived at 6:12 a.m., which meant Evelyn had been awake long before it. She noticed the timestamp the way she noticed most things now. Without comment, without judgment. Just a quiet registering. A fact settling into place. The subject line was neutral. Clean. The kind of line assistants favored because it offered no emotion and asked for nothing. Brand positioning draft. Evelyn read it standing in her kitchen, one hand resting on the counter, the other wrapped around a mug she hadn't realized she'd poured. The coffee had gone untouched long enough to cool. She didn't mind. She had always preferred things just shy of warm. Mila had attached the final file. No commentary. No explanation. Just a short line beneath the signature. Let me know if you'd like revisions. Nothing more. Evelyn stared at the sentence longer than necessary. It was polite. Professional. Exactly what she should have wanted. And yet she felt the faintest pull of disappointment. An absence where something else might have been, if either of them had allowed it. She didn't respond right away. She took a sip of coffee instead. Bitter. Metallic. It grounded her. The morning moved forward the way mornings always did. Shower. Hair pinned back with the same practiced motions. The suit she wore more often than not because it required no decision. The ring. Still there, still heavy enough to feel. By the time she arrived at the building, the lobby had transformed. Light streamed through the glass in wide, unapologetic bands. The security desk was staffed. The space hummed with the low murmur of arrivals. The clack of shoes on stone. The subtle choreography of people who believed themselves busy. Evelyn moved through it with ease. She always did. She had built a life where the world met her on her terms. The morning meeting with the executive team stretched longer than planned. Questions about budget, concerns about rollout, the predictable resistance to anything that required vulnerability, masquerading as prudence. Evelyn listened. She asked the right questions. She made notes in the margin of her pad without needing to look down. When the conversation circled, as it always did, back to the issue of brand perception, she felt a familiar tightening in her chest. "Let's move on," someone suggested. Evelyn lifted a hand, not sharply, just enough to pause the room. "No." The word settled with quiet authority. She didn't look at anyone in particular when she said, "We're not moving on, we're avoiding." A few glances passed around the table. Someone shifted in their seat. Evelyn opened her folder and slid Mila's report into the center of the table. She didn't introduce it by name. She didn't need to. "This," she said, tapping the page once, "addresses what we've been circling for months. Not from a metric's first position. From a human one." She let the silence work for her. It always did. There were questions. There was pushback. There was the careful discomfort of people realizing something new had entered the conversation, something they didn't fully understand but could not dismiss. Evelyn held the line. Calm. Precise. Unmoved. She did not mention Mila. She did not need to. By the time the meeting ended, her shoulders felt tight in a way she hadn't noticed while it was happening. She rolled them once, subtly, as she gathered her things. Her assistant hovered at the door. Heart. Yes. There's a request from the talent program team. Mila Reyes is asking to shadow the communications rollout this afternoon. Evelyn's hand stilled on her folder. "Is that within scope?" she asked. "Yes," her assistant replied. Technically. Evelyn nodded once. "Approve it." She didn't add anything else. She didn't need to. The afternoon unfolded in fragments. Emails answered. Calls returned. A brief lunch she barely tasted. The quiet satisfaction of decisions made cleanly. Yet beneath it all ran a thin, persistent awareness, like a sound just below hearing. At 3, she found herself on the communications floor without remembering the decision to go there. The space was different from the executive levels. Less polished, more lived in. Desks clustered closer together. Coffee mugs with chipped rims. Plants that leaned toward the windows without permission. Mila sat near the far wall, laptop open, headphones draped around her neck. She was speaking softly to someone beside her, one hand moving as she talked. Not emphatic, just precise. When she laughed, it was quick, contained, as if she didn't fully trust it yet. Evelyn stopped a few feet away. She didn't announce herself. Mila looked up anyway. Their eyes met. Held. Something passed between them, not recognition exactly. Something quieter. A mutual awareness that this was no longer accidental. Heart, Mila said, rising halfway from her chair before catching herself and sitting back down. Evelyn almost smiled. Stay, she said instead. The word felt different here. Less like command. More like permission. Mila nodded. Okay. They stood side by side at the edge of the room watching the team work. Screens flickered with drafts and mock-ups. Someone adjusted a tagline. Someone else argued gently for a different font. Mila leaned in slightly, not toward Evelyn but toward the screen. Close enough that Evelyn could feel the warmth of her through the thin space between them. Not touching. Just present. If we change the phrasing there, Mila said quietly, it shifts the emphasis from control to trust. Evelyn followed her gaze. Explain. Mila did. Carefully. Thoughtfully. Without assuming agreement. Evelyn listened. She noticed with an odd clarity how easy it was to be quiet around Mila. How the silence didn't feel like absence, but like room. They moved through the afternoon that way. Standing. Sitting. Watching. Commenting when necessary. Sharing small, practical moments that had nothing to do with desire and everything to do with alignment. At one point, Evelyn handed Mila a pen without looking. Mila took it. Their fingers brushed. Just briefly. Contact was so light it might have been imagined. But Evelyn felt it immediately. A spark of sensation that traveled up her arm and settled somewhere unhelpful. She withdrew her hand at once too quickly. Mila noticed. She didn't comment. The world, indifferent, continued around them. Phones rang. Someone cursed softly at a frozen screen. A cart of equipment rolled past, wheels squeaking. Later, when the floor began to empty, Mila gathered her things. She hesitated near Evelyn's desk. I didn't expect you to use the report, Mila said. Evelyn looked up from her screen. Why not? Mila shrugged. People don't usually listen the first time. They do, Evelyn said, when the argument is sound. Mila studied her, something thoughtful settling behind her eyes. Thank you. For the work, Evelyn corrected. Yes, Mila said. Then after a pause, for seeing it. The words stayed with Evelyn longer than they should have. They left the building separately. That had been deliberate. Evelyn watched from her office window as Mila crossed the street, coat unbuttoned, hair catching the late afternoon light. She didn't wave. She didn't look back. Evelyn didn't move until Mila was gone from sight. That evening at home, Evelyn cooked a simple dinner she barely ate. She moved through the rooms with the practiced quiet of someone accustomed to being alone. She placed her phone face down on the table and left it there. When she went to wash her hands, she noticed the absence immediately. Her ring. She stood at the sink, water running, staring at her bare finger. The skin beneath was pale, unmarked. It felt wrong. Exposed. Light. She tried to remember when she had taken it off. She couldn't. The sensation followed her through the rest of the night. Into bed. Into sleep that came late and left early. The next morning, she wore no ring. No one commented. At the building, the week continued. Meetings. Decisions. A growing sense of something aligning, quietly beneath the surface of routine. Mila appeared in her days without announcement. In brief check-ins. In thoughtful emails. In the way Evelyn found herself anticipating her presence without admitting it. They shared coffee once, standing at the counter in the break room, not sitting. They talked about nothing important. An article Mila had read, a podcast Evelyn pretended not to know about. They did not stand too close. They shared an elevator ride where neither of them spoke. They shared a moment in a hallway where Mila paused, then stepped aside to let Evelyn pass, and their shoulders brushed, unavoidable this time. Mila inhaled sharply. Evelyn felt it. Nothing happened. Everything did. On Friday, as the office thinned early, Evelyn found herself alone in the lobby again. The same space. Different hour. The glass catching the last of the day. Mila emerged from the corridor, slower this time. Tired. Real. They stopped a few feet apart. "You didn't put the ring back on," Mila said. It wasn't a question. Evelyn felt the words land with unexpected force. She hadn't realized how visible the absence had become. "No," she said. Mila nodded once. She didn't smile. She didn't apologize. "Okay," she said. They stood there, the building breathing around them. The world continuing on schedule. Cars moving. Lights shifting. Evelyn felt the familiar thought return, not as warning this time, but as question. "This is a mistake, isn't it?" She did not answer it. She watched Mila turn toward the doors. Watched her hesitate. Just a fraction of a second. Then Mila left. The doors closed behind her without resistance. Evelyn remained, suspended in the quiet, aware of the space that had opened, and the way it refused to close. The first thing Evelyn noticed was the quiet, not the absence of sound. There was always sound in the building, but a different quality to it. The kind that settled instead of passing through. A hush that felt intentional, as if the walls themselves had decided to listen. It was late enough that the office lights had thinned to necessity. Floors above and below had already surrendered to darkness. Only the executive level remained lit, a contained island suspended above the city. Evelyn stood at the window of her office with her jacket draped over the back of the chair, sleeves rolled to her forearms. The glass reflected her faintly. A woman framed by light. Posture precise. Expression unreadable even to herself. She had been like this for several minutes. Long enough for thought to lose its edges. She was waiting again. The recognition didn't bring shame this time. Just clarity. A soft knock came at the door. Not the sharp, efficient rap of an assistant. Not the hesitant pause of someone unsure they belonged there. A knock that waited. "Come in," Evelyn said. Mila stepped inside, closing the door behind her with care. She held a folder against her chest, not defensively, just habit. She looked tired. Not worn down. Just real. Like someone who had lived the entire day instead of managing it. "I'm sorry," Mila said quietly. "I didn't mean to stay this late." "You didn't interrupt anything," Evelyn replied. The lie was gentle, almost kind. Mila glanced around the office. The bookshelves. The framed photographs that revealed nothing personal. The desk cleared to the edge of austerity. "You wanted to review the rollout numbers?" Mila asked. "Yes." Evelyn gestured to the chair across from her desk. "Sit." Mila did. They worked. For a while the rhythm returned, the familiar cadence of shared attention. Mila explaining. Evelyn asking. The screen between them providing a necessary buffer. But something had shifted. The air felt closer. Not heavy. Intimate. At one point, Mila leaned forward to point at a line item, her sleeve brushing the edge of Evelyn's desk. Evelyn became acutely aware of the distance between them. The space where her knee might touch Mila's if she moved an inch closer. She didn't move. Neither did Mila. The restraint had become its own language. "Can I ask you something?" Mila said after a while. Evelyn's pulse answered before she did. "Yes." Mila hesitated. Her fingers tightened briefly around the folder, then relaxed. "Why me?" she asked. The question wasn't flirtatious. It wasn't accusatory. It was vulnerable. Evelyn closed the file slowly. She didn't look at Mila right away. She needed a moment to decide which truth to offer. "You were right," Evelyn said finally. "About the brand. About perception. That doesn't answer. I noticed because you weren't trying to be noticed." Evelyn interrupted gently. "You weren't performing for approval. You were present." Mila's breath caught, almost imperceptibly. "And because," Evelyn continued quieter now, "you didn't treat me like an idea." Silence settled between them. Mila absorbed this without deflecting it, without apologizing for it. "That's not why I asked," Mila said. Evelyn looked at her then. Mila's gaze didn't waver. Her eyes were darker in this light, reflective, as if holding more than one thought at once. "I want to know if you see me," Mila said. "Or if you see what I represent." The question struck deep. Evelyn stood. The movement was instinctive. She needed to change the geometry of the room before it overwhelmed her. She crossed to the window, placing a hand against the glass. The city glowed beneath her, indifferent and vast. "I see you," she said, back still turned. "And that is precisely the problem." Mila rose as well. She didn't come closer. She didn't retreat. "I'm not asking you to do anything," Mila said. "I just need to know if this..." She stopped, restarted. "If whatever this is real to you." Evelyn closed her eyes. In the darkness behind her lids, she saw fragments. The empty apartment. The ring she no longer wore. The quiet mornings that stretched too wide. She turned back. The distance between them had narrowed. Not because either had moved, but because the moment had. "Yes," Evelyn said. The word fell into the space like a stone into water. Mila's shoulders loosened. "Just a fraction." "Okay," she whispered. They stood there, neither crossing the last step. Evelyn lifted her hand, slowly, deliberately, and let it hover between them. An offering, not a demand. Mila watched it. Then, with equal care, she placed her own hand beneath Evelyn's. The contact was light. Consent made visible in restraint. Evelyn felt the warmth of Mila's skin, the subtle tremor that ran through both of them, the way her body reacted before her mind could intervene, breath shallow, pulse quickening. She didn't pull away. Mila didn't either. Evelyn's thumb brushed lightly against Mila's knuckle. A question, not an answer. Mila nodded once. That was all it took. The kiss was gentle, almost tentative. Their mouths met without urgency, without claim. Just contact. Just recognition. Evelyn felt a sound rise in her chest. A soft, involuntary exhale, as if something long held had finally been released. They parted almost immediately. Not because they wanted to, because they needed to feel what had just happened. The aftermath lingered in the air between them. A warmth. A hum. Mila's hand remained in Evelyn's. "I don't want to rush this," Mila said softly. "I know," Evelyn replied. "I don't want to be someone you regret." Evelyn's chest tightened. "You aren't?" Mila searched her face. "Promise me we'll stop if it stops feeling right." Evelyn nodded. "We will." They stood there longer than necessary, longer than safe. The building shifted around them, the distant hum of an elevator, the low murmur of traffic. Reality intruded gently. Evelyn stepped back first, not as rejection, as care. "We should go," she said. Mila nodded, though the movement carried reluctance. They gathered their things in silence. The quiet was no longer empty. It was full, charged with what had been crossed and what still waited. At the door, Mila paused. "So," she said, attempting lightness that didn't quite land. "This complicates things." "Yes," Evelyn agreed. Mila smiled then. Small. Uncertain. Real. "I'm okay with complicated," she said. Evelyn held her gaze. So was she. Mila left. Evelyn remained. The office felt altered, as if the walls had absorbed the moment and would not return to neutrality. Evelyn sank into her chair, one hand pressed to her mouth, the echo of the kiss still there, warm, destabilizing. This was no longer a mistake waiting to be corrected. It was a choice in motion, and for the first time, Evelyn wasn't sure she wanted to stop it. The kiss didn't leave Evelyn's mouth when Mila walked out of the office. It stayed. Not as a mark, not as heat exactly, more like a change in pressure, as if the air inside her had been rearranged, and her body hadn't caught up to the new shape of it. She sat at her desk long after the elevator's distant chime had faded, one hand resting on the edge of the blotter, the other loosely cupped beneath her chin. Nothing had happened that anyone could see, and yet everything in her felt visible. She did not text. She did not call. She did not reach for the quick reassurance of contact the way she imagined other people might. Evelyn had never been that kind of woman. She had spent years training herself away from urgency. She had built a life where longing had nowhere to go but inward, where desire could be held like a sealed envelope, something handled carefully, never opened in public, never forwarded. She stood eventually, switched off the office light, and walked out into the hallway with the kind of composure that had saved her more times than she could count. The building was nearly empty. It smelled faintly of cleaning solution and cold air. The lights in the corridor were motion sensor and came on in sections, brightening as she approached and dimming behind her, as if the building were reluctant to admit she was still there. In the elevator, she watched her reflection in the polished metal panel. Her lips looked normal. Her face looked normal. Nothing about her betrayed what had just happened. Except her eyes. They were too awake. At home, she did the same things she always did. Shoes off at the door. Coat hung on the same hook. A single lamp switched on in the living room. Warm light, controlled. She poured water into the kettle. She set a plate out, then another without thinking, then stopped mid-motion. Her hand froze above the cabinet. No, not that. Not exactly. She set one plate on the counter and put the other back. She stood in the quiet kitchen, listening to the kettle begin its slow heat. The apartment held her the way it always did, tasteful, calm, too clean. It was a space curated to contain a life that did not spill. She wanted suddenly for something to be out of place. She pressed her fingertips to her mouth. The gesture felt private, unearned. She lowered her hand and moved toward the sink just to have something to do. She washed her hands carefully, then dried them carefully, as if she could scrub away the sensation without losing the memory. When she went into the bathroom, her eyes caught on the small dish on the counter where she used to place her ring at night. The dish was empty. The absence was a thin ache. Not dramatic, persistent. Like a tooth you couldn't stop testing with your tongue. She lay in bed later with the lights off, the city's glow slipping through the curtains in faint stripes. She didn't sleep. Her thoughts looped with a quiet insistence she couldn't interrupt. It happened. You chose it. Now you have to live with it. By morning, she had the kind of calm that came from exhaustion. The next day at the office, Mila was already on the communications floor when Evelyn arrived. The team was gathered around a screen. They were talking about something small, word choice, spacing, the feel of a photograph. Mila stood at the edge of the group, not in the center. She wasn't trying to be seen. Still, Evelyn saw her immediately. Mila's hair was down today, falling in a dark wave over the collar of her blouse. She held a paper cup of coffee, fingers wrapped around it like she needed the heat. When she laughed at something someone said, it was brief and quiet, like she'd learned not to let joy be too loud. Evelyn paused at the entrance. Mila looked up. Their eyes met. A beat. Two. Mila's mouth softened, almost a smile, but she didn't let it become one. She didn't cross the room. She didn't speak. Consent again in restraint. Evelyn gave the smallest nod. Not public affection. Not rejection. A private acknowledgement tucked into a gesture no one would read. Mila's shoulders loosened a fraction. The day moved on. They passed each other in hallways. They spoke in meetings. They exchanged files and revisions and short, precise questions. Their hands didn't touch. Their voices remained even. If anyone watched them closely, they would have seen nothing. Two women doing their jobs with competence and focus. Only Evelyn could feel the weight beneath it all. The silence that wasn't empty anymore. The charged normalcy. In the afternoon, Evelyn found Mila in a small conference room with glass walls, drafting copy for the campaign. The room was bright with winter light. The table was scattered with printouts and pens. Mila sat cross-legged on the chair, posture casual in a way that would have seemed inappropriate on anyone else, yet on her it looked like ease rather than disrespect. Evelyn stopped at the doorframe and waited until Mila looked up. "Do you have a minute?" Evelyn asked. Mila's gaze searched her face. "Yes." Evelyn stepped inside, closing the door behind her, not locking it, not sealing them in, simply closing. Mila's eyes flicked briefly to the door, then back to Evelyn's. A quiet question. Evelyn remained near the table, not moving closer. "I read the revised draft," Evelyn said. "And?" Mila asked. Her voice was steady, but her fingers tightened slightly around the pen. "It's good," Evelyn replied. "Better." Mila exhaled. The sound was small. Human. Evelyn's chest tightened with a tenderness that had nowhere appropriate to go. They stood in silence for a moment. Mila's gaze dropped to Evelyn's left hand, empty ring finger, visible now in daylight. Mila did not comment. That, more than anything, unsteadied Evelyn. She wanted to say something that would make the air less tight. Something that would allow the intimacy without making it into a spectacle. But every sentence she tried on in her mind sounded like a confession, and Evelyn had never been a woman who confessed. Instead, she said, "We need to be careful." Mila's eyes lifted slowly. "We are?" Evelyn held her gaze. We need to be more careful. Mila didn't move, but something sharpened behind her eyes. What does that mean? Evelyn felt the old instincts rise. Control, distance, safety. The reflex to protect by withdrawing, to manage a risk by removing the variable. She chose her words with deliberate restraint. It means we cannot be alone like that again. A quiet stillness filled the room. Mila's face did not change dramatically. No anger, no tears. Only a subtle tightening around the mouth, the kind that suggested she was working, not to react too quickly. Like what? Mila asked softly. Evelyn's throat tightened. Late. In my office? Mila's voice stayed calm. We were reviewing work. Evelyn felt irritation rise, not at Mila, at herself. At the fact that Mila could speak the truth so plainly while Evelyn was drowning in implication. Yes, Evelyn said. And that isn't the point. Mila set the pen down. The click against the table sounded too loud. The point, Mila said, is that you kissed me. Evelyn's pulse leapt. Mila watched her carefully as she spoke, as if tracking whether the truth would make Evelyn flinch. And then, Mila continued, you're standing here acting like you're saving me from something. Evelyn's jaw tightened. I am. Mila shook her head once. No, you're saving yourself. The sentence was quiet and devastating. Evelyn looked away toward the glass wall. Outside, 2 employees walked past, laughing about something mundane. Their laughter passed through the hallway like a brief gust of warmth. The world kept moving, indifferent to what was happening inside the room. Evelyn lowered her voice. This building is full of eyes. So is the world, Mila replied. That's not new. Evelyn turned back. You don't understand what people do with stories in places like this. Mila's gaze held steady. I understand exactly. Evelyn's breath caught. You can't. Mila leaned back in her chair, shoulders squared. I spend my life watching stories turn into currency. I know what people do with narratives, Evelyn. I know what they do with power. That's literally my work. Hearing her name like that, without heart, without insulation, made Evelyn's chest tighten again. You're 24, Evelyn said before she could stop herself. The words came out sharper than intended. A line drawn. A reminder of distance. Mila's eyes narrowed slightly. And you're 45. Silence. Evelyn felt heat rise behind her ribs. Not desire, not only. Fear. The old fear of wanting something that could fracture her carefully built life. The old fear of being seen as reckless, indulgent human. Mila's voice softened. Don't use my age to make me smaller. Evelyn swallowed. That's not what I'm doing. It is, Mila said. It's what you're doing right now. You're turning this into a lesson. You're making me the risk. Evelyn's hands curled briefly at her sides, then relaxed. You are a risk. Mila's expression shifted just slightly. Hurt, but controlled. So are you. The air between them tightened again. A held breath. Evelyn found herself remembering the moment after the kiss, the way Mila had paused. Asked for care. Asked for stopping if it stopped feeling right. Mila's clarity had been a hand offered, not a trap. Evelyn had accepted it. Now she was trying to pull back and call it protection. Mila stood slowly and came around the table. She didn't cross the final distance. She stopped a few feet away. Tell me the truth, Mila said. Not the corporate version. Evelyn's throat tightened. She felt her mind search for a safe statement, a policy, a protocol. None existed. The truth, Evelyn said quietly, is that I haven't wanted anyone in a long time. Mila's breath caught, just slightly. And now, Evelyn continued, voice lower. I do. Silence pressed in. Mila didn't move. She didn't reach out. She simply held the moment with a steadiness that made Evelyn's chest ache. Evelyn added, almost reluctantly, and I don't trust myself. Mila's gaze softened. Because you think wanting equals losing control. Evelyn's mouth tightened. She didn't deny it. Mila let the silence stretch. She seemed to understand that Evelyn needed room to exist inside her own admission. Then Mila said very quietly, I'm not asking you to lose control. I'm asking you not to disappear. The sentence landed with the weight of something final. Not an ultimatum. A truth. Evelyn stared at Mila's face. The steadiness. The restrained hurt. The way she looked both young and older than her years, like someone who had learned how to survive being underestimated. "I'm not disappearing," Evelyn said. Mila's eyes searched her. "Then what are you doing?" Evelyn's voice went colder than she intended. "Setting boundaries." Mila's mouth tightened. "For whom?" Evelyn didn't answer. Mila nodded once slowly, as if receiving the answer anyway. She stepped back. Not far. Just enough to create a small gulf. "Okay," Mila said. The word was quiet, but it carried distance. Evelyn felt the fracture in herself widen, the hairline crack becoming something you could slide a fingernail into. Mila opened the door. Before she left, she paused with her hand on the handle. She did not turn fully back. Her voice came low and careful. "If you want me," Mila said, "you have to want me like I'm real, not like I'm a risk you can manage." Then she left. The click of the door closing behind her was soft, but it echoed. Evelyn remained in the conference room longer than she should have. The table was still scattered with drafts. Mila's pen lay where she had set it down, a simple object holding the imprint of a moment. Evelyn sat in Mila's chair without thinking. It was warmer than she expected. Her body registered the warmth like it mattered. Like proof. She stared at the empty doorway and felt the familiar thought return, not as warning now, but as a question that repeated with small variations, each one more dangerous. "What are you doing? What are you afraid of? Who are you protecting?" She went back to her office and tried to work. The day refused to cooperate. Emails blurred. Words lost their meaning. She found herself pausing over sentences, rereading them without comprehension. She picked up her phone twice, then set it down again. She walked to the window and watched the city, as if the traffic patterns might offer instruction. Around 5, her assistant appeared at the door. "Ms. Hart, the board ethics committee is requesting a meeting." Evelyn's stomach tightened. "When?" she asked. "Tomorrow morning," her assistant said. They said it's routine. Routine. Nothing was routine about this. Evelyn kept her face neutral. "Who requested it?" Her assistant hesitated. "Marianne Caldwell." The name landed with quiet menace. Marianne was not the chair, but she behaved like someone who believed power could be taken simply by naming it. She had been polite to Evelyn for years in a way that always felt like teeth behind velvet. Evelyn nodded once. "Schedule it." When her assistant left, Evelyn sat very still at her desk. She did not move for several minutes. The narrative had found them. Not because anyone had seen a kiss. Not because Mila had done anything wrong. Because in places like this, proximity alone could be turned into accusation. Because a woman like Marianne did not need proof. She needed possibility. Evelyn's phone vibrated once. A message. From Mila. 2 words. "Are you okay?" Evelyn stared at the screen as if it had spoken out loud. The tenderness in the question made her chest ache. It was the kind of care that didn't demand. Kind of care that simply noticed. Evelyn's thumb hovered above the keyboard. She could respond honestly. She could say no. She could say not exactly. She could say, "I'm afraid." She could say, "I miss you in the space you left." She could say, "I'm sorry." Her thumb did not move. She set the phone down. Then, after a beat that felt like a betrayal, she picked it up again. On her desk, the pen she'd borrowed from the conference room sat beside her notepad. She hadn't realized she'd taken it with her. It was a cheap corporate pen, nothing personal, and yet it felt like evidence of contact. Evelyn's attention snagged on the emptiness of her ring finger again. The pale skin, the absence that had become impossible not to feel. Her phone vibrated again. Nothing this time. Only the aftershock of the first message, the way it had opened something in her. Evelyn drew in a slow breath. Her thumb finally touched the screen. She began to type. Stopped. Restarted. No. Not that. Not exactly. She stared at the half-formed sentence, the cursor blinking like a pulse. Outside her office, the building continued. Footsteps, distant voices, the soft rhythm of work ending. Someone laughed. Someone said goodbye. Evelyn held the phone in her hand, the message unfinished, and felt the weight of a choice approach like weather. Not yet. Not resolved. Just arriving. The cursor blinked like a pulse. Evelyn watched it for a long time, the half-formed sentence sitting on the screen in a thin, unsheltered line. Her thumb hovered, then withdrew, then hovered again. It wasn't indecision the way people like to imagine it, wavering, weakness. It was discipline colliding with need. Outside her office, the floor emptied in slow increments. Doors clicked. Voices softened. The building shifted into its evening body, less performative, more honest. Even the air felt different when there were fewer people to impress. Evelyn finally typed 3 words. "I'm not." She stared at them, then added a 4th. "Okay." She didn't send it. Not yet. Her phone felt too warm in her hand, as if it had absorbed the heat of her hesitation. She set it down, stood, and went to the window. Below, Chicago moved in its indifferent patterns. Cars slid through intersections. People crossed streets with their collars up, hands shoved into pockets, as if the cold were a private problem they had learned to manage without complaint. She understood that. She had built a life out of it. A soft knock came at her door again, and the sound startled her. Too gentle to be an interruption, too quiet to be accidental. She turned. Her assistant stood in the doorway, coat already on. "Hurt. Sorry." Mary Ann Caldwell's office called again. They moved the ethics meeting up to 8. 8, Evelyn repeated, as if the word might taste different the second time. "Yes." Her assistant hesitated. "They also asked who will be attending on your side." "My side." The phrasing turned her stomach in a way she didn't allow to show. "No one," Evelyn said. "I'll go alone." After her assistant left, Evelyn returned to her phone. The message still sat unsent. She read it once, twice, then hit send before she could undo it. The reply came quickly enough to feel like Mila had been holding her own breath. "Do you want me to come up?" Evelyn's throat tightened. She could have said no. She should have said no. It would have been the clean choice, the safe one. The choice that proved she could still control the narrative. Instead, she typed, "Not here." A pause. Then Mila. "Where?" Evelyn stared at the question until it stopped looking like language and started looking like possibility. She typed, then erased. Typed again. Restarted. "Not that?" "Not exactly." Finally, downstairs. The lobby. 10 minutes. Mila's response was immediate. "Okay." Evelyn put her phone in her pocket and sat very still for a moment. The stillness didn't feel like waiting. It felt like stepping up to something and not moving away. In the elevator, her reflection looked composed. In the polished metal, she looked like a woman on her way to a meeting. But her hands were cold. Her mouth felt unfamiliar. Her body had begun to behave like it knew something her mind hadn't authorized. When she stepped into the lobby, the building was almost empty again. The security guard nodded once and returned to his screen. The marble held the lights. The glass doors held the city. Evelyn stood near the corner windows, not in the center of the space, as if positioning herself slightly off the stage might change what was about to happen. Footsteps came from the employee corridor. Mila emerged in her coat, hair down, cheeks flushed from the cold outside or the speed of her arrival. She looked around, found Evelyn, and walked toward her without hesitation. She stopped a few feet away. Neither of them moved closer. The distance between them was charged. Not with danger, not with hunger, but with the weight of everything they had been refusing to say out loud. Mila spoke first. "What happened?" Evelyn's voice came out quiet. "The ethics committee meeting." Mila's eyes narrowed slightly. "Because of rumors." Evelyn nodded once. "Mary Ann Caldwell." Mila exhaled, slow. "Of course." Evelyn watched Mila's face. How quickly she assembled herself, how she steadied her breath. She looked young in that moment, not because she was fragile, but because she was still learning what it cost to be watched. "I'm sorry," Evelyn said. Mila's gaze snapped back to her. "For what?" Evelyn swallowed. "For what I said, for how I said it." Mila held her gaze. "For trying to manage me." The word landed cleanly, sharp and accurate. Evelyn didn't flinch. "Yes." Silence. The lobby's air conditioning kicked on with a low hum. Somewhere above, an elevator chimed. The city outside continued to exist in its unbothered way. Mila's voice softened. "You don't owe me an apology for being scared." Evelyn's mouth tightened. "I do when I turn fear into distance and call it protection." Mila studied her. "Are you asking me to disappear again?" Evelyn's chest tightened. She shook her head once. "No." Mila waited. Evelyn drew in a slow breath, then said the thing she had been circling for weeks. I'm going to tell them the truth. Mila's eyes widened slightly. What truth? Evelyn looked down at her hands, then back up. That I am not your employer. That I do not control your compensation, your role, your reviews, your future here. That you were hired through the program team. That your work stands on its own merit. That any interaction between us has been voluntary, careful, and... She stopped. The next word caught in her throat. Mila's voice went low. And personal. Evelyn nodded. Yes. Mila's face shifted, not relief, not victory. Something tender, complicated. You're going to say that out loud. Evelyn's throat tightened. Yes. Mila took a small step closer. Not into intimacy, just into honesty. Why? Evelyn held her gaze. Because if Marianne is going to write a story about us, it won't be one where you're helpless and I'm predatory. And it won't be one where you're a reckless girl and I'm the cautionary tale. Mila's breath caught. Evelyn continued, softer now. And because I'm tired of hiding behind rules that were never made to protect you. They were made to protect the building. The silence that followed felt like a held hand. Mila's voice came quiet. And what about what you want? Evelyn didn't answer quickly. She let herself feel it first. The warmth of Mila's presence, the faint scent of cold air on her coat, the awareness that Mila had come here because Evelyn asked. Then Evelyn said, I want you to be real. Mila's eyes softened. I am. Evelyn's mouth tightened with something like pain. To me, in my life, not as a risk I managed. Mila looked at her for a long beat. Then she nodded, slow. Oh, okay. Not agreement. Not surrender. Consent. Evelyn felt her body loosen in a way that startled her. Not completely. Just enough to notice how tense she had been. I don't know what happens after tomorrow, Evelyn admitted. I can't promise it's clean. Mila's mouth curved faintly, almost sad. It was never going to be clean. Evelyn let out a quiet breath that might have been a laugh if she'd trusted it. No. Mila's eyes held hers. Are you going to ask me what I want? Evelyn's chest tightened. What do you want? Mila didn't answer immediately. She looked down at Evelyn's hands, then up again. I want you to stop deciding for us alone. Evelyn nodded. I can do that. Mila's voice softened further. I want you to let me stand beside you, not behind you. Evelyn's throat tightened. Okay? Mila's gaze searched her face. And I want you to want me without punishing yourself for it. The words struck deep. Evelyn felt something in her chest fracture again, not the small crack of fear, but the larger break of admission. I don't know how, Evelyn said quietly. Mila took another small step forward. Their coats almost touched. The warmth between them rose. Then learn, Mila said. With me. Evelyn lifted her hands slowly, palm open, not reaching for Mila's body, only offering. Mila watched it, then slid her fingers into Evelyn's. Warm. Certain. Human. Evelyn's breath hitched. They didn't kiss. Not here. Not in the lobby where stories could be born in peripheral vision. Their restraint had become a form of care. But Evelyn held Mila's hand for one beat longer than was necessary for comfort, and Mila didn't pull away. They separated without drama. Mila left first because she insisted on it, not out of secrecy but out of strategy. Evelyn watched her go with a steadiness that felt newly earned. Back upstairs, Evelyn didn't sleep much. She made tea and drank it slowly. She read through the ethics policy twice. She drafted a statement in her head that didn't sound like corporate language. She practiced speaking the truth without letting it become a confession. At 7:58 the next morning, she walked into the boardroom alone. The room smelled faintly of citrus, cleaner, and coffee. The table gleamed. The windows showed a pale winter sky, flat as paper. Marian Caldwell sat near the center, in a dark blazer, posture perfect, expression pleasant in a way that suggested she enjoyed the ritual of concern. 2 other committee members were there. An HR representative. Legal counsel. The performance of neutrality. Evelyn, Marianne said, voice sweet. Thank you for coming on short notice. Evelyn took her seat without comment. She placed a folder on the table, hands steady. Of course, Evelyn replied. Marianne folded her hands. This is routine. We've received concerns about possible boundary issues. Evelyn raised her eyes. Let's not pretend this is routine. A small pause. Marianne's smile tightened. We have an obligation to address any potential conflicts. Evelyn opened her folder, slid a single document across the table. Here is the organizational chart. Mila Reyes is hired through the Internal Talent Program. She does not report to me. I do not evaluate her performance. I do not determine her compensation. I do not approve her time off. I do not control her role. Marianne's eyes flicked down, then up. That may be true in a formal sense, but influence. Evelyn's voice remained calm. Influence does not equal authority. Marianne leaned slightly forward, as if coaxing. Evelyn, the concern is about optics. About the possibility of coercion, even unintended. Mila is young. Evelyn's jaw tightened. Do not use her age to erase her agency. The HR representative shifted. Alert now. Legal counsel glanced down at his notes. Marianne's smile sharpened. Agency doesn't remove the ethical responsibility of the more powerful party. Evelyn met her gaze. Then let's speak plainly. You are not concerned about Mila's safety. You are concerned about my vulnerability. A silence fell, heavy and clean. Marianne's expression cooled by a fraction. That's unfair. Evelyn's voice stayed even. Here is what I am doing to ensure there is no ethical breach. I will recuse myself from any decisions that could affect Mila's role, current or future. I will not be involved in her evaluations in any capacity. If any projects require direct collaboration, they will be overseen by her manager and the communications lead, not by me. The HR representative nodded slowly, already thinking in policy. And, Evelyn continued, the word catching slightly in her chest before steadying. If you are asking whether there is a personal relationship developing between us, I will not lie. Yes, there is. And it is consensual. Marianne's face tightened. The room held its breath. Evelyn kept going, because stopping now would turn truth into weakness. Mila is not a client, she is not my subordinate. She is a colleague whose work I respect. If anyone has questions, they can come to me, not to her. The HR representative spoke softly. Thank you for your clarity. Marianne leaned back, eyes narrowed. So you're confirming it? Evelyn held her gaze. I'm refusing to let you distort it. Marianne's voice went colder. Visibility has consequences. Evelyn's mouth tightened. So does silence. The meeting continued for another 30 minutes. Questions, cautions, procedure. Evelyn answered without defensiveness. She did not over-explain. She did not plead. She treated the truth like it belonged to her. When it ended, the HR representative walked with her into the hallway. This will cause chatter, she said gently. Evelyn nodded. I know, but, the woman added, it's not a violation. Not with the boundaries you've set. Evelyn's shoulders loosened slightly. Thank you. Back in her office, she sat down and stared at her phone. She didn't wait for courage to arrive. She typed, it's handled. Are you free at lunch? Mila's reply came almost instantly. Yes. Where? Evelyn hesitated, then chose honesty over strategy. My place. If you want. A pause. Then, I want. At noon, Mila arrived with cold air on her coat and a paper bag in her hand. Evelyn opened the door and stood back, letting Mila enter without touching her. The apartment smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and coffee, the quiet kind of place people assumed was empty of mess. Mila looked around once. Not judgmental. Curious. This is... very you, Mila said softly. Evelyn exhaled. Yes. Mila set the bag on the counter. I brought lunch. I didn't want you to cook just because I was here. The consideration in the gesture made Evelyn's chest ache. They ate at the kitchen island, not at the dining table. The food was simple. Salad, warm bread, soup that steamed faintly. Mila spoke about the rollout, about the team's energy, about the small victories of wording that felt true. Evelyn listened, but her attention kept snagging on the ordinary intimacy of it. Mila's hands on the mug. Mila's hair falling forward when she leaned. Mila's quiet pauses where she seemed to decide not to say everything at once. At one point, Mila asked, how did it go? Evelyn answered simply, I told the truth. Mila's gaze held hers. And? Evelyn swallowed. And I didn't die. Mila's mouth curved, warm now. Good. They sat in silence for a long moment after that. Not awkward. Full. Mila looked down at Evelyn's left hand on the counter. Still bare. Mila didn't speak. She just let her fingers drift closer, stopping an inch away. A question made visible in distance. Evelyn moved her hand toward Mila's. Slow. Deliberate. Tight. Their fingers met. Mila's breath caught. Evelyn felt it like a shiver in the air. Evelyn, Mila said quietly. Voice careful. Are you sure? Evelyn looked at her. Really looked. Not at the idea of her. Not at what she represented. At the woman in her kitchen with soup cooling between them. Eyes steady, hands warm. I'm sure of this, Evelyn said. Mila's shoulders loosened. Okay. Evelyn's thumb brushed lightly against Mila's knuckle. Once, then again. A small repetition that steadied her. They didn't kiss immediately. They stayed inside the touch, the warmth, the quiet proof of consent. When they did kiss, it was slower than before. Not tentative, not urgent. A kiss that belonged to daylight. A kiss that felt like choosing. Mila pulled back first, forehead resting lightly against Evelyn's for a beat. I don't want to be hidden, Mila whispered. Evelyn's throat tightened. You won't be. Mila searched her face. Not even when it's inconvenient. Evelyn's mouth tightened. Not even then. They stayed close for a long time. Not performing intimacy, just inhabiting it. Mila's hand rested on Evelyn's wrist as if anchoring herself. Evelyn felt the faint pulse under her skin, the quiet insistence of being alive. After a while, Mila stood to rinse the bowls without being asked. The mundanity of it felt almost shocking. She rolled up her sleeves and ran warm water, humming under her breath without realizing. Evelyn watched her at the sink and felt something inside her soften into grief. Not sharp, not dramatic. Just the tender recognition of how long she had lived without this kind of small companionship. Mila glanced back. What? Evelyn shook her head once. Nothing. Mila's eyes narrowed gently. That's not true. Evelyn swallowed. It just looks right. Mila turned off the water, dried her hands, and came back to Evelyn. Then let it be right, she said. In the weeks that followed, nothing exploded. That was the strangest part. There were whispers, of course. Pauses in conversation. The slight hesitation of people recalibrating their stories. Evelyn felt the eyes in meetings, the subtle shift when Mila entered a room and someone noticed Evelyn noticing. But the world did what it always did. It adjusted. Evelyn did not announce anything. She did not make a speech. She did not turn her life into a statement. She simply stopped hiding. It began in small ways. Mila appearing in Evelyn's office with a file and not leaving the door open out of fear. Evelyn walking through the communications floor and placing a hand briefly on Mila's shoulder when she passed. Light, professional enough to be plausible, intimate enough to be true. The first truly visible moment happened at a company reception for the campaign launch. The event was modest, wine, small plates, a short presentation. Nothing glamorous. Still, it was public. Evelyn wore a dark dress, simple, severe. Mila wore a deep green blouse and black trousers, hair down, lips bare. They arrived separately. They stood apart at first. They spoke to different people. They did the necessary choreography of professional life. Then at one point, Mila crossed the room toward Evelyn with a calm that looked like courage. She stopped beside her, not behind, not at a distance. Evelyn turned. Mila's fingers brushed the back of Evelyn's hand. A question. Evelyn let her hand open. Mila's fingers slid into it. They stood like that, two women holding hands in a room full of people who pretended not to see until they couldn't pretend anymore. The silence that followed wasn't scandal. It was recalibration. Marian Caldwell watched from across the room, her smile tight. Evelyn met her gaze once, then looked away, refusing to feed the hunger for drama. Mila's hand was warm in hers. Steady. The rest of the night passed with an odd sense of normality. People returned to their drinks. Conversations resumed. A few colleagues smiled at Mila with genuine warmth, and Mila smiled back, relaxed in a way she hadn't been before. Some people avoided them. Life kept going. Later, when Mila came back to Evelyn's apartment, they didn't talk about Marianne. They didn't analyze rumors. They didn't dissect the politics. They took off their coats. Mila kicked off her shoes by the door, smiling softly at how Evelyn's space had begun quietly to accommodate her, An extra mug in the cabinet, a second toothbrush in the bathroom, a scarf left over the chair like it belonged there. They made tea. Mila insisted on cutting lemon. Evelyn watched her hands, the small competence, the ease. At the sink, Mila washed the knife and set it to dry. Evelyn stood behind her, not touching, just close enough that Mila could feel the warmth of her. "Is this what you were afraid of?" Mila asked softly. Evelyn's breath caught. "Partly." Mila turned slightly. "And now?" Evelyn looked at her bare ring finger and felt the absence not as loss, but as room. "Now," Evelyn said quietly, "I'm afraid of going back to the way it was." Mila's gaze softened. "You won't." Evelyn's throat tightened. "Promise?" Mila stepped closer, close enough that their coats would have touched if they'd been wearing them. "I can't promise you'll never feel scared," she said. "But I can promise I won't let you do it alone." Evelyn closed her eyes for a beat. The words settled in her like warmth. Later in bed, Evelyn lay awake listening to Mila's breathing. Slow. Even. The sound was so ordinary it felt miraculous. Mila shifted in her sleep, hand drifting until it found Evelyn's forearm, fingers curling lightly as if anchoring herself without waking. Evelyn didn't move. She let the touch exist. And in the quiet, she understood something with a clarity that didn't require language. Love hadn't undone her. It had simply made her real again, and real was not something she could control. It was something she could choose. Some truths don't arrive like lightning. They settle like warmth in a room you stop locking. What would it cost, really, to be wanted without turning your own heart into a liability? Some stories don't end when the moment fades. They stay with us, asking to be felt. If this story awakened something you recognize, you're welcome to share your truth in the comments. And if this journey stayed with you, consider subscribing to Secret Garden Stories and sharing it with someone who might feel seen. Your support helps this space grow, a world with more love, more honesty, and less silence. Thank you for being here.